flight on the booking, sir. 198 vegetarian meals, 68 Oriental, and 34 kosher meals.
I'm sorry, sir. The flight is already partly booked. There are only 350 seats left.
Yes, 196 seated at the front of the aircraft and 186 seated near the back of the aircraft.
The duty-free allowance for your charter flight to the Virgin Islands is 5 bottles a head. So with 500 passengers aboard...
Yes, I can confirm 314 seats on that flight.
Yes, 2,500 bottles would be about right.
When the jumbo jet gets its license, travelers will have to think big. The Wright brothers' first flight could have happened inside its cabin. Is the jumbo just another step up an endless ladder? Sir Robert Coburn, for 5 years head of our Royal Aircraft Establishment.
For the last 50 years, that is for the entire history of aviation, the size of aircraft has doubled regularly every 10 years. And if you take the size of aircraft, for instance, and extrapolate the curve to 1970, the 747 and the jumbo jet falls precisely on this curve. If you were to extrapolate this curve into the next century, you discover that you're thinking of 10,000-seater aircraft. Now, I think that is well beyond the sensible limit.
But what is a sensible limit? They said the jumbo couldn't be built. No factory could hold it. But Boeing leveled a mountain and built the biggest factory in the world. And the revolution in our travel habits begins in only 4 months. 8 747s have been made so far. If the test program's a success, it'll go into service over the Atlantic in December. Present aircraft will still have their uses, but slowly they'll be shunted off the big routes. The jumbo may cost £8 billion, but it's cheaper to run, and the airlines have ordered nearly 200. The tailplane is as wide as the main wing of some of the old airliners, and the engines are so big, some airports fear the blast may smash their windows. Even veteran pilots are awed by the dimensions. It weighs 350 tons, 1 ton of which is the weight of the air enclosed in the cabin. No less astonishing than its size, the way it was introduced. The jumbo was designed, developed and built in little more than 2.5 years, far shorter than it takes to bring out a tiny military jet. Once the plane makers were convinced a 500-seater was possible, of course it had to be built. In appearance, the jumbo's been likened to a giant whale, but once in the air, the resemblance quickly ends, according to the first man to fly her, test pilot Jack Waddell.
Well, I found that the 747 is considerably easier to fly than present jetliners. There are a number of reasons for it. Probably the most important is the design of the control system, which gives light responsive forces to the pilot, not unlike power steering in an automobile.
So far, technical limits on aircraft size have always been temporary. The unimaginable today flies tomorrow. Before the jumbo, the last big upward jump had come with the invention of light alloys. The 747 is the marriage of many factors. Better instruments to ease the pilot's life. A mighty undercarriage designed to withstand 26,000 landings. And more reliable production techniques acquired by Boeing's engineers in the tight discipline of making hardware for the space program. Above all, it was a new type of engine. Engines which eject 3 tons of air every second. Yet are so sophisticated that Boeing claimed the 747 will be quieter than the smaller jets in service today. To the watchers at Boeing Field in Seattle, the Jumbo's size makes it seem practically stationary in the air. Yet it's the fastest subsonic airliner in the world. It'll cut half an hour off the Atlantic run and give a smoother ride.
Extreme stability and tolerance of turbulence make it a nice airplane from both the pilot's and the passenger's standpoint. I would, to put it in rough quantitative terms, say that it's some 30% better in turbulence than present jet transports. My first observance of the turbulence absorbing qualities of the 747 occurred during the first flight, when I was flying in the proximity of clouds right after takeoff and asked the fighter chase aircraft whether he felt any turbulence, and he said yes, he did. We were barely able to detect it in the 747.
Hostesses on the Jumbo won't have to worry about turbulence, but they may be kept busy explaining that the wing isn't really on fire. The plane's so massive that its wings compress the air and make their own clouds. It's no secret to airlines that most people are anxious about flying. The Jumbo's been designed to carry 3 times as many as before. Will the sheer size make people more anxious still? Pan American, which helped finance the Jumbo with a massive pre-production order, is worried about some of the findings of its market research teams. Pan American Vice President James Montgomery.
We feel that so far we have not yet properly explained this new airplane to the traveling public. We like to think of the space in the 747 not as a cabin, but much more as a flying living room. For years, due to economic necessity, today we have forced people to fly in a tube. It is a long, gray tube. There's no other word to describe it. The 747 will have ceilings higher than most of our own at home. The breadth of the cabin is 20 feet, and you have much more the impression of a flying living room. These are the things which we must make known to the people who will use her.
Nous sommes ici au pompe supérieure du bar du 747.
The 28 airlines who've ordered the Jumbo are vying to make their version seem more alluring. Here we're in the bump of the Jumbo's head, behind the cockpit. Airlines can do what they like with the inside. The plans for this room include an in-flight cabaret, a sauna bath, and even an immigration office. To go down, there's a spiral staircase. For a hostess, life aboard will be more like a big hotel. The Jumbo will carry up to 16 hostesses. That's as many as there were passengers in the early airliners. It'll also have up to 16 toilets and 7 kitchens. To speed the plane's turnaround at a destination, each kitchen's been designed to be wheeled away and replaced by another, already fully stocked. For quicker handling, Boeing even offers a hover kitchen on an air cushion. On the Jumbo, people will sit 9 or 10 abreast, with 2 aisles down the plane and many more across. In these training sessions, cabin staff learn to pick their way through the maze.
Et distribuer ces repas, nous simplement un essai pour voir comment nous allons pouvoir.
Old chores have been automated. To meet agricultural requirements, cabin staff must stride down today's airliners, squirting insecticide from aerosols. On the Jumbo, the insecticide is distributed via the air conditioning. The Jumbo was first launched under the banner of economy. With 490 aboard, cost per seat would go down by a third. But the influential airlines decided to go for luxury rather than economy, putting fewer people in wider seats. Their decision is binding on all the scheduled airlines. So to start with, airlines will pocket the money they save on Jumbos as a safeguard against rising costs. Knut Hammarskjöld, head of IATA, the Airlines Association.
The possible economy of the new aircraft should certainly be passed on to the public as soon as possible. I'm afraid, however, that in the marketing of these new aircraft, the possibilities of lowering fares have been somewhat exaggerated.
If fares aren't cut, Can demand for airline seats possibly rise to meet this embarrassingly vast supply? To fill the giant, the airlines need to find 30 million new clients. But for men like Ernest Garner, head of one of our biggest travel agencies, the story is bound to have a happy ending.
The seats have to be filled. The airlines are going into a tremendous investment program, and they've got to fill the seats, so there must be an expansion. And they will use various means of doing this. Of course, there will be lower fares, there's no doubt about that. And there will be special promotional fares, particularly for tourist traffic rather than for business traffic. We've lived through the last 20 years sort of catering for the business man, but now we're really going into the leisure market and catering for the tourist. And of course the 747 will be the perfect vehicle for this.
オックスフォードストリート、あの辺りがイギリスの庶民のショッピングセンター。皆様の真正面の方には BBC の放送局が出てます。
Group travel. It helps with the language problem. It's ever more popular. It could also be the jumbo jet's chance to touch off a worldwide tourist explosion.
大きな右手のオフィス、ジャンボジェットのモデルがあそこのカタログの後ろに置いてございます。
Last year, Britain showed a profit for the first time in her tourist balance sheet. The travel business is so confident about the jumbo's impact, it's already studying plans to deal with the expected overcrowding. Among the suggestions, changing the guard 4 times a day, building plastic replicas of the crown jewels, and promoting many more institutions to the rank of a tourist attraction. So group travelers of the future may find, like these Japanese today, that the guide always takes them to admire Battersea Power Station.
これがバターシャパワーステーションと申しまして。
If airlines won't cut fares, group travel may become the fastest expanding business in the world. Charter flights providing package tours will fill the jumbos to the brim. The group traveler's demands are simple. He wants to see the whole world in 21 days and take home 500 photographs to prove it. The jumbo jet may make his dream come true. But just who'll share in this bonanza depends on more than filling aeroplanes with profitable tourists. The concern of many future jumbo operators is voiced by the head of the Irish airline, Michael Dargan.
I would have grave doubts about the pace at which airports are being made ready for the new large jets. I'm concerned that the passengers will be pampered, so to speak, inside the aircraft with the standard of service we'll all be able to offer them, standard of personal service, and then be blown away from the top of a tall ladder, 2-story ladder, in getting in or getting out of the aircraft, provided we don't have jetways, that type of thing, to take them in comfort from the aircraft into the terminal buildings, and don't have proper facilities to allow them through the airport buildings in comfort.
Airports had less than 3 years to prepare for the invasion. At London Heathrow, it's costing over £12 million to lay out the welcome mat for the giants. Going up, this special jumbo jetty. It'll have a 900-foot travelling carpet. And going down, a new apron strong enough to hold a dozen 747s. London says it's better prepared than any American airport to meet the first wave of giants. But Heathrow's brave stand can only be a makeshift solution. By 1975, supersonic airliners will be queuing up too. London is still without a third airport. For a tourist-earning country, the danger is that the visitors will fly past out of reach if its airports can't cope. Roissy, near Paris, France's massive bid for tourist ascendancy in the age of the giants. It's the site of the third Paris airport, only 15 miles from the Eiffel Tower. The whole will house one of 5 terminals. It's Europe's first custom-made airport for the aircraft of tomorrow. France realized 10 years ago that the key to attract the tourist was to keep well ahead of demand. A site was earmarked next to the motorway to northern France. In only 3 years, 150 planes an hour will thunder over drivers' heads on a bridge that will take the runway over the motorway. Roissy will handle 80,000 passengers a day and meet all Paris's needs until 1985. And then, a 4th airport is already earmarked on the other side of the city. In Britain, the mere mention of an airport is enough to start a protest meeting. How did the French cope? Roissy village will stand between the 2 main runways. All new development in the area was banned long ago, so the airport builders had to knock down only 1 farm. The government says the village should be proud that its name will figure in every airline timetable. But the writing on the wall has been ignored by the village, whose population would fit into only 2 jumbo jets. Only one villager is as far-sighted as the airport planners. He's having his house soundproofed. But landing at a super airport like Roissy will be a bonus for the jumbo. Most of its life it will be landing at fields built for smaller jets, a third of its weight, outsmarting them on their home ground as the best attired plane around. Jumbo's nose gear. It's 80 feet ahead of the main undercarriage. Each of the Jumbo's tires has to bear a weight equal to 5 elephants. The 747's total, 18 wheels. It's the trick that enables it to land at unexpected places when there is a diversion. The research chief of British Airports, Graham Hill.
But, of course, there will always be the emergency when the very large aircraft lands at the pretty small airport. And I'm reminded in this context of the director of a rather small airport in the United States, who, on being asked what he would do about terminal facilities and terminal buildings when the 747 landed at his airport, drew himself up and said, "Sir, when the 747 lands at my airport, it is the terminal building."
Many airlines must wish the 747 could also be its own hangar. BOAC's bill for this special jumbo hangar at Heathrow, £4 million. The jumbo's too heavy to jack up for servicing the undercarriage. It's simpler to move the floor. The hangar's being built so that it can be extended, in case the airline buys a still bigger plane. The spending doesn't end when you sign a cheque for £8 million and receive the ignition key. Airline economists are obsessed with recurring costs, like fuel. Washing a plane not only keeps it spruce for the traveller, on one of today's jets, being clean and smooth can save a ton of fuel on the Atlantic run. On a jumbo, it will be 3 tons. But in the world, there's still only one washing bay big enough, and that's at the factory in Seattle. If a jumbo's too unwieldy or too crowded for a quick turnaround, its savings may be whittled away by delays, the hope of an eventual lower fare dashed. BOAC sent men out to study the way crowds move in cinemas, stadiums, the airport itself, to find out how human bottlenecks form. But it's the bottleneck outside on the tarmac that really worries the airlines. Boeing claim the Jumbo can be serviced in only 60 minutes. Airlines would like to know how. Not their least concern are the mundane details. How quickly can you empty nearly 500 ashtrays? For that, there's been talk of central plumbing to link all the trays to a jumbo ash can in the aircraft's hold. The German national airline has calculated that a jumbo at rest will need over 50 attendant vehicles, nearly all of them specially designed. Among them, 3 airport control vehicles, passenger steps, transfer coaches, luggage loaders, trucks for catering and for cabin service, up to 20 cargo containers with their trolleys, mobile cargo conveyors and transporters, a water vehicle and 3 trucks to service the lavatories, 2 17,000-gallon fuel tankers, giant platforms to de-ice the plane and clean the windscreen, ground power units, and finally a special towing tractor weighing 70 tons. Obsolescence overnight. That's what the Jumbos are going to mean to airport hardware around the world. Among the army of weird gadgets being hurriedly assembled to rise to the occasion, the Jumbo staircase on wheels, thought up by an English firm at Hook in Hampshire. And the firm met the export challenge by selling 23 of the stairs to the Americans. You'll board the Jumbo 17 feet up. To get that high, experts had suggested mobile escalators, even a giant lift on wheels. But it's the long trek up Britain's staircase that won over the Americans. The stairs can get you into any plane made by East or West. But the plane makers' increasingly lofty designs create other problems too. Safety rules are the same for any plane. Before they can fly the Jumbo, airlines will have to show they can get a possible 500 passengers out in under 90 seconds. This is the world's tallest escape chute, designed for the 747 by another British firm at Godalming. The slide doubles up as a giant life raft. The Jumbo's got the same safety gear as other jets, only more of it and bigger. The only innovation, equipping cabin staff with loud hailers to make themselves heard over the din of a mass escape. A reputable airline could expect to pay about 3% in insurance premiums for its entire fleet. Usually the premium depends more on expertise and accident record than on the type of plane flown. When a plane busts up anywhere in the world, the chances are it's been insured in London. Are the insurers worried about the prospect of 200 Jumbos? Insurance investigator Alan Hunter.
Sheer size doesn't bother us as such, and we're encouraged that it's a development of a more or less conventional aeroplane. Initially, inevitably, the record suggests that we may have some early losses, but eventually we're convinced it's going to be a very good risk indeed. I feel that there probably is a greater chance of survival in many of these aircraft. If a very large aeroplane hits a house, the aeroplane's going to win. And there is a lot of structure which can crush and so protect the passenger. And I think even in quite severe accidents, a number of people will walk away. Very unlikely that you'd lose the whole lot, although, of course, the mountain impact is just non-survivable if that should happen.
The hardware can be covered no matter how big. It's the number of people at risk that may one day make planes uninsurable.
The thing that counts is the probable mix of passengers within any given aeroplane. The American passenger, of course, is the one that tends to get very high awards in his country. And I suppose our biggest nightmare is the thought that the American Bar Association might charter one of these 747s and fill it full of very expensive lawyers. So it's really the passenger mix and the probable use which affects the issue mainly. The average level of award, one is thinking in terms of perhaps an average of $200,000 a passenger, and you multiply that by 500, it's a very severe problem indeed.
I do think that the first time a 747 crashes and kills 500 people, if one could imagine, for instance, 500 school children returning from the Far East, this will have an enormous effect on public opinion, undoubtedly. And it will lead, I think, for a demand for still tighter safety standards. And the authorities will have to submit to this, and therefore, by purely social pressure, the 747s and subsequent aircraft may have to have a better safety record than the existing ones. But my feeling is that society has an incredible capacity for absorbing technology of this sort, and perhaps in 10 years from now, a crash of a 747 will cause no more disturbance than it does with a 707 now. I don't think this is a very pleasant thing to look forward to, but I'm afraid this is what I think happens.
But insurers may be in trouble even if the fatal crash never happens.
We do have practical problems in the sort of minor misdemeanor that any aeroplane can get up to if it has a landing gear collapse type of accident. We're now dealing with an aeroplane weighing 700,000 pounds, and the sheer practical problem of moving it off a runway poses enormous problems. Apart from the fact that it's worth $20 million and we don't want it bulldozed off, in fact, a bulldozer wouldn't shift it, and the only way one could move it in a hurry would be with some sticks of dynamite and a large brush.
Some of the men, whose hands will be on the controls, believe that they'll need all the help they can get. The chairman of the British Airline Pilots Association and a future jumbo pilot, Captain Laurie Taylor.
Well, the pilot's eye is 30 feet above the ground when the airplane's on the ground. The pilot's eye is also about 18 feet ahead of the nose gear, the nose landing gear, and 100 feet ahead of the main landing gear. To turn the airplane around on a standard 150-foot wide runway will be quite a trick on this airplane. The wheels are so far behind the pilot and so far below him that pilots feel that he should have closed-circuit television, which gives him a picture on the flight deck of the position of his wheels relative to the edge of the runway or taxi track, so that there's no risk of the wheels leaving the paved surface and closing down an airport. The flight deck of the airplane is one place where a design opportunity has been missed. It's unnecessarily small. It's smaller than many of our existing airplanes. It's stuck on the top of the fuselage. Someone described it like a pimple on the top of the biggest aspergillus in the world. In some versions, this airplane will have up to 500 passengers. Well, that many passengers are a problem whether it's in a cinema or at a football game. And I think it'll be necessary for some means of surveillance to be installed. We'd like to see closed-circuit television so that the captain can see what's going on around the airplane. People in London are going to see even more of airplanes than they do now. The airplane is less maneuverable due to its greater weight and the inertia. So pilots are going to want to do a nice, long, straight-in approach to the runway, so you get an extended approach path. So the airplane will, I think, be very conspicuous to people on the streets of London.
By next year, 15 planes nearly twice as big as this will want to land in London each day. By 1975, it could be 20 each hour. Jumbos won't only appear over more people's houses, but more often.
One could increase the frequency of landing at major aerodromes by improving the air traffic control standards. But eventually we shall saturate all the main aerodromes of all the big cities in Europe, probably within the next 10 years. The answer, and the only answer that I can see, is to develop lateral air routes direct between towns like, say, Portsmouth and Innsbruck, or Mallorca and Birmingham. But in addition to that, there is the development of short and vertical takeoff aircraft. Now, we've seen a marvelous demonstration with the Harrier landing near the GPO tower. The actual aerodrome size, including, say, the noise area around it, needn't be much more than a quarter of a mile square for those kind of aircraft. But also, to make VTOL pay, it's got to be right in the city centre. And not a coal yard or a brick yard flinging dust over everybody when it takes off.
Oberpfaffenhofen, a remote village in Bavaria. In an unlikely pastoral setting, the VTOL, or jump jet, prepares to enter the jumbo era. The prototype of the world's first jump jet transport goes on trial at an airfield once used to test the wartime Dornier bombers. This is the Dornier 31. Most jump jets can carry only a small crew with no passengers. The Dornier could seat 40 and still cruise almost as fast as a commercial jet. Many problems must still be solved, like noise. The Dornier say that a jump jet terminal in the heart of a city could be surrounded by a tall wall, so people will be spared the worst noise. It's maneuverability that makes the jump jet a perfect complement for the jumbo with its long glide path. For the Dornier, despite its 22.5 tons, can turn virtually on its own axis. Jump jets would fly beneath the air lanes used by the giants, in empty air corridors, which will become subways in the sky.
London, New York on the 22nd of July around 11:30. Just a moment, sir, I'll see what we have available.
Today's air congestion is still under control, but the number of people who fly goes up each day by 40,000. To keep them up, airlines must rely increasingly on the computer.
1300.
In this hall, the most advanced reservation system in the world.
Just hold a minute, sir.
Good afternoon, this is BOC Reservations. May I help you? Yes, you wish to change your group reservation?
Bookings are fed into a computer 20 miles away at London Airport.
Yes, certainly. One moment, please, sir.
Yes, madam, you wish to travel to Montreal on the 22nd of June with your baby. Just a moment and I'll check that flight for you.
Yes, sir, I have the reservation now. Mr. Croning, you wish to change. Now going direct to Cape Town, sir.
Next year, the computer will have to start working overtime. The airlines bought 12 jumbos.
Right, one moment, please, sir.
How old is the baby? I see, 4 months. Well, at 4 months, it would be suitable for a sky cot.
The same machine that memorizes an infant's need helps nurse the aircraft through to its destination. This is Boadicea, the BOAC computer at London Airport. repository not only of bookings and customers' fetishes, but of most of the other data an airline needs to fly, from cargo weights to the strength of a side wind on a runway at the other end of the world. Even with a full passenger load, the Jumbo will carry nearly 20 tons of cargo. It's the computer that'll work out where each crate should be placed to make the plane stable. And you can get an instant flight plan for any destination. Without leaving the ground, the computer will be able to keep its fingers on the pulse of the Jumbos every second of the flight, so the pilot can be warned of trouble before it happens. But for airlines, the giants are much more likely to spell trouble on the ground. After the long haul to the airport from town, there's often a long trek through the terminal to the plane. This is the world's newest airport at Houston in Texas, opened on the eve of the Jumbos, designed for a nation of car owners. But the vision of its designers could apply to most terminals in Europe. The innovation here was to abolish walking. Flanking each terminal building are giant spirals. They give access to a new style of car park built over the terminal. So a passenger drops into his departure lobby by lift.
Springfield, Providence, and Boston. First class jet day coach service. Boarding gate 18. All aboard, please.
Many feet below ground, another Houston remedy for passengers' exhaustion. Electric trains that link the terminals and carry people to flight stations. Now, American designers are working on another plan, to build an entire terminal underground, with car parks dug beneath taxiways to bring passengers still closer to their planes. Next year, the world's airlines will carry 400 million people. In 1980, nearly 1,000 million. By then, a big airport might be faced with up to 10,000 passengers an hour from Jumbos alone. Round the world today, it takes on average 20 seconds to examine a passport. But in many countries, each traveller's name must be checked against a list of undesirables, often as long as a London telephone directory. It can take a whole hour to clear the passengers of one of today's planes, and they carry only a third of a Jumbo's load. How then will the Jumbos fly past the red tape? In France, scientists think they've hit on a way to keep the police happy and the Jumbo jet set on the move. Not suspects in a spy thriller, but employees of an electronics firm near Paris taking part in a trial of the world's first magnetic passport machine. The old cardboard passport is replaced by a magnetic card. On entry, the card is scanned by a computer fed with the current list of undesirables. Time for normal immigration, only a few seconds. And the machine prints out basic details on a visitor for the files. Airlines favor this scheme, but there's a snag. To make it work, governments must agree on a common card and a common list of undesirables. The new passport isn't much bigger than a credit card. In the finished system, the machine would even project the passenger's photo onto a screen to see if his face fits. The owner's details for scanning are on the back of the card on magnetic stripes. A villain could wipe out his own details, but he'd find it difficult to substitute new ones. When a card's suspect, an alarm goes off. The traveller finds himself assisting the police in their inquiries, while his name is fed into another computer to get the full story. France is considering launching a pilot scheme soon, with the issue of cards to a sample of travellers between London and Paris. If the idea catches on, it could save millions of travellers from doing time in the airport lounges of the future. After immigration, the air traveller's next hurdle, luggage. At most airports, we're trusted to pick up only our own. Check-in would cause more delays. Every 24 hours round the world, 100,000 suitcases go astray. On average, we fly with 2 bags. So if only 5 jumbos arrived at once, the result could be a 5,000 suitcase pileup. But like the humans of the jumbo era, luggage too may soon be pushed around and watched by an infallible computer. The makers of this system at Dallas in Texas want to reduce congestion by dispersing luggage areas over an entire airport. For each passenger's luggage, its own robot cart. Future airports and their car parks would bristle with dozens of check-in points where luggage could be dumped. In this demonstration, the cart's being sent on its way by a dispatcher. On a keyboard, he tells the computer which flight to send the luggage to. But most check-in points would be automated, the passenger himself instructing the computer by feeding a coded baggage stub issued with his ticket into a machine. On arrival at a flight station, luggage is transferred to its plane. They haven't found a way to automate that yet. Then the cart's fed back into the system for reuse. Claiming luggage works in reverse. Gone the old scrummage around a spinning carousel. With his magnetic stub, a traveler could summon his cart from anywhere in the airport. Included in the railroad, a holding area where baggage waits more patiently than its owners for delayed flights. To cope with its traffic, London Airport would need 20,000 carts. So to arm against the jumbos, future airports may have to turn themselves into giant roller coasters. Texas shows what imagination can do, if only you've got the money. And in the year of the king-size planes, Texas again points the way. After the drive-in cinema and the drive-in burger bar, now the world's first drive-in airline office. Eventually, the airline hopes to sprinkle its drive-ins around the countryside, like so many gas stations.
Afternoon, Braniff International. May I help you?
Yes, my name is H.M. Clark. I've got a first-class seat on Braniff Flight 59 to London on the 1st.
All right, and how did you want to pay for them, Mr. Clark?
Be a charge.
Fine, I'll open the carry and you can put your charge card in.
Okay. There you are.
Thank you. I'll need you to sign this transportation receipt. Do you have a fountain pen?
Yes, I do. All right, sign it. Keep the top one, send the rest of it back.
Right.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you.
Have a pleasant flight.
Thank you. So long.
Tomorrow's traveler. Will he be cosseted all the way by friendly computers, or caught up in the greatest jam in the history of aviation? Most airport design lags 15 years behind the new technology in the air. If the thinking's big enough, airport technology may catch up with the 747 eventually. But the plane makers are a restless breed and get uneasy if they think their competitors have something bigger in the air. Already, Boeing plans a stretched version of the jumbo, 50 feet longer. And what then? The man who designed the 747, Joseph Sutter.
We can see that growth in their size can be easily 25% in the next few years. And with what we know about engines and technology growth beyond that looks quite feasible. The supersonic airplane is coming. It's coming quite rapidly. It will develop in its growth very similar to, you might say, the present jet series. I think you could see supersonic transports in the category of 500 to maybe even as high as 1,000 people.
As far as size is concerned, it doesn't seem to be approaching any limits whatever as far as the pilot's ability to handle it is concerned. Therefore, I would see no reason why transport aircraft and bombers couldn't very reasonably build considerably larger than this one.
I would have thought that with new materials like carbon fiber plastics coming along, which offer strengths several times greater than any existing material, we could, if necessary, build an aircraft twice as big as the 747. So I don't believe there are any mechanical limitations yet in sight.
Boeing's test pilot says he had to keep reminding himself to do nothing when he landed the first jumbo. For planes get easier to fly as they grow bigger. And still the march of the giant continues. Already America is testing a super jumbo. This is the biggest plane ever built, the Lockheed Galaxy. It's almost as long as a football field. Initially, it'll carry cargo for the American Air Force. But Lockheed's hoped to introduce a commercial version. As a civil plane, the Galaxy could carry 120 motor cars or 800 passengers. The Galaxy's got 28 wheels, and the landing gear has a kneeling drive, so that, not unlike a performing elephant at the circus, the plane can tilt forwards and back for easier loading. Lockheed say the Galaxy is the first plane built that has a frame large and strong enough one day to contain a nuclear engine. Sir Robert Cockburn spoke of the need for a sensible limit to the indefinite escalation in the size of airplanes. If the airports fail to meet the challenge of bigness, that limit could come as the jumbos turn into costly white elephants. Or will society wait to call a halt until nuclear leviathans are circling overhead? One thing is certain, the plane makers will go on building bigger simply because it can be done.